number one, experience. There are three different areas that really you can start looking at when you're assessing someone's resume about, is this person going to be able to handle this role, this position? Now, really what I'm talking about here is quite specific to development, and this is in addition to all the other things that you would normally assess for a candidate that you're considering to hire. Okay, so just thinking about the tech side of this and the development side and aspect to it. But the first is their level. So is this developer a junior, a mid, a senior? Where are they in their career? And where that becomes important is, I have seen people with a hiring strategy. This was actually the startup organization. Their aim was to ship product quickly. And they thought that the best way that they could achieve that is by making sure that everybody on the team that they hired was a tech lead. And so they had about 4 or 5 tech leads. The problem is that that didn't work. It was way too top heavy in the tech lead section. The team dynamics completely didn't work. The whole thing fell apart and they ended up, a couple of them left. One of them they had to fire. It didn't work out. So when you're looking at a person's resume, think about what kind of level do they need to be in their career, the seniority and experience level, and then hire accordingly. Now, the next thing would be making sure that the tech stack matches. Totally essential. I know we've talked about this in previous webinars. If you don't have a match between the skills or the tech stack that a developer is familiar and comfortable with and the tech stack that you're trying to develop in, then that gap in the middle is going to be a very rocky road for that person to learn that tech stack potentially in order to upskill. Now, some technologies will more easily apply to other technologies than others. For example, if you have a JavaScript developer that is quite familiar with React and you want them to work in another front-end framework, whether that's Vue or Angular, the leap in skill or the leap in sort of that gap is not as big as if you've got someone who say, hey, I'm a PHP developer and you're going to make me do JavaScript. Well, it's like they're both languages. You can use them both on the web, but they're completely different. And that gap is going to be bigger. The concepts, for example, involved in putting together one of the modern front-end framework are quite different to the kind of concepts that people are going to come with if they've been PHP developers their entire life. The third thing that you'd be looking for, aside from their level and the tech that they're familiar with, would be their past experience for a role. Now, what I mean by that is if you need an architect, then I would strongly recommend that as in a software architect, not a building architect. I would strongly recommend that you find someone that has at least some experience of that in the past. Similarly, if you need someone to be tech lead, then unless you're willing to invest in that person to be able to take them from, say, senior across to tech lead, then you're better off getting someone with tech lead experience. And the reason I'll tell you that is because tech lead is not just a tech position. You can't just fill it with more tech and more experience in tech. Tech leads need to have people skills. They need to be able to coordinate things. They need a certain amount of project management or ability, or at least to schedule tasks and that sort of thing. So bear in mind the experience that person has had for the role that you need them to fill is really what I'm talking about. Now, I know earlier on I was talking about a team being top heavy where you've got all tech leads. It's just as bad to hire all juniors, because then you'll have a development team full of people who are very enthusiastic and are willing to write a lot of code, but maybe don't have the direction of a steady hand to guide them in the direction they kind of need to go. And what you can end up with in that situation is ultimately a really big mess that will potentially need a rewrite, or I've seen disasters. Obviously, GistLens does project rescue, so we see that kind of thing a lot. But ultimately, hire a gradient for the team that you're trying to fill. If you can only have one developer and your budget only stretches to one and it's like an MVP or a micro project, my advice would be to find someone that is more senior but still has their hands on the tools. Because I know sometimes seniors, as they progress in their career, they do more and more and more sort of overview management, governance, and less actual tool time. So less actual clicking on keys on the keyboard. Now, the last thing I wanted to mention in terms of experience is, and this happens quite a bit in tech, depending upon where that person has spent their career, they may or may not have as much experience as you can see on their resume. And what do I mean by that? I mean, I have seen people who have spent a career, typically in large enterprise, where they've spent, say, 10 years there. And you think, wow, this person has spent 10 years at this really big brand name company. They must have awesome, amazing experience. When what you actually find when you scratch the surface a little bit is that actually that person doesn't have 10 years experience. They've got 1 year's experience that they've repeated 10 times. And that can happen if you kind of get stuck in the same technology or the same role for an extended period of time. So stability is good. Okay, you don't want people jumping around, just like everyone says. If you find someone's resume, they've had 20 different jobs in the last year, what's going on there? But also being stuck is bad. So being stuck in the same tech stack, not getting exposure to learn new things. Okay, these are all not good signs on a person's resume.